Thank you, Bhagyashri. May I request all the speakers of today's session to please come forward and be at their place. Brigadier Anshuman Narang, please. Dr. Jabin Jacob, Dr. Shen, and Dr. Lee. Yes, thank you so much. Bhagyashri has already introduced these esteemed speakers to all of you. And after yesterday's elaborate and intensive discussion on 3 topics, today in this last session of the 7th India-China Forum, we will be discussing about military-civil fusion in China's development strategy. In the forum, this is the last session, and we are having these 4 distinguished speakers who will be talking about the civil-military fusion in China's development strategy. When we think about People's Republic of China, this has been a topic of enduring interest for the scholars, China watchers, diplomats, and anyone interested in China. The party-state relationship, party-society relationship, party-military relationship, military-civil relationship, and how all these relationships have produced their own dynamism in China's system. And from the time of the beginning of the revolutionary process in China, there always has been a military party, military civil fusion, partnership, and overlapping of the processes that we could see in the Chinese history. In the modern Chinese history, China's military, or as it is called as the People's Liberation Army, has always occupied a very, very important place in China's development strategy. And the Chinese Communist Party, which controls the military in China, People's Liberation Army in China, for them this has been one of the important wings of ensuring the path of development that the party has chosen in different phases in last 75 years or so. With the process of modernization that Deng Xiaoping embarked on since 1978, he also ensured that one of his modernization would be that of the defense sector. And defense became one of the important aspects of the modernization project of China in the liberalization period, that is post 1978. But with that, with the process of liberalization, also emerged a discussion, a discourse that liberalization of China can truly be successful if there would be a clear-cut distinction between party and military, between party and society, and accordingly, at least up to the early 21st century, some developments have taken place wherein the processes were attempted to inculcate to try to project that China is trying to evolve a path wherein there would be a clear-cut distinction between state, party, society, etc. However, over the last 10 years under Xi Jinping's regime, we could see that once again Chinese Communist Party is re-establishing its stronghold over all the wings, over all the sectors in the country, and military also is not an exception to that. And in that particular context, wherein Xi Jinping has given a very, very ambitious developmental agenda to China, his leadership also is looking at military as something, as an important wing that would contribute to achieve the developmental goals that the Communist Party has set for itself and for the country. The 2035 developmental goal, 2049 development goal. And in that context, we are going to discuss some of the aspects of civil-military fusion in this particular session. Let me now invite the first speaker of today's session, Dr. Shen, who is a research fellow and director at Division of National Security Research, Institute for National Defense and Security Research, Taiwan. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair Dr. Sudhakar, and organizer Jabin. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm so glad to be here to join this year IFC. I still remember last year we are in Mumbai talking about another China issue. I present the topic is military-civil confusion to the global security initiative. I think there is not direct implication, military-civil fusion to the global security initiative. But today, my topic is more directly than last year. My topic is the impact of the military-civil fusion on China's defense industrial modernization. And Dr. Sudhakar mentioned about 1978 Deng Xiaoping for modernization, industrial, agriculture, defense, and science and technology. But right now, you can see that the defense modernization and technology modernization already integrated together. And they try to find some Western technology to improve, to increase their capability in technology. Not invite, maybe steal, maybe save. They have different way. And then today's presentation, I will join my colleague, Dr. Jyun-yi, and maybe later he will also talk something about this. Let's check the history about China military or defense industrial modernization history. We can see because PLAs come from Red Army, right? Red Army is a guerrilla warfare. They don't have a formal logistic system or formal supporting system. And then because their party control everything. So in China, the whole government and civil system under the leadership of the party during the Red Army and still right now also. It needs the party to be a dominated ruler to control everything and put the all sort on the military civil fusion. We also can see from 1949, the early stage of the founding of the PRC, China military modernization is a system from and the development, the system from and development from the Soviet Union. But after the split, breakup, CCP and Soviet Union and China tried to do itself to develop his military modernization, especially in 1980. But after the Tiananmen Square, before Tiananmen Square, China, because the United States also put some support to the China, but after the 1989, cut down any support from the Western country. So from there on, they also did it by China itself. And after the 1980, 1990, after the economic rise, so China had more resource and defense technology through the private enterprise to get more technology. For example, it used an entertainment company to acquire all Ukraine aircraft carrier. We know Liaoning Hao. Liaoning Hao is from a civil enterprise to buy from Ukraine and say, okay, I will make a maritime park and buy that aircraft carrier and then back to the China and develop the first aircraft carrier, Liaoning Hao. So I think this also is a military civil fusion. And the development of the dual use technology and the key technology obtained through the military civil fusion right now. I conclude that some factors, some characteristic of the China military civil fusion. First one is eliminate the barrier between the civilian and defense sector and facilitated the direct flow of technical talent and capital. The second one is leverage domestic and foreign civilian technology investment and R&D and partnership opportunity to develop China's military and intelligence capability. The last one is systematically transfer technology to ensure that China military win the rest to develop and integrate the range of key emerging military applications, including AI, biotechnology, and quantum computing. There's a framework of MCF. MCF, demand and supply. You can see in the supply, you have resource increasing and improve the resource allocation efficiency. And then got a new model, develop new model, and then new industry. Under the demand is from military to civilian, and from civilian to the military. And from military to civilian is a new combat, to get a new combat capability. From civilian to military is a new production capability. China MCF has 6 key areas. The first one is coordinating infrastructure, construction, and resourcing sharing. The second one is developing national defense, science and technology, industry, and weapon and equipment. The third one is strengthening collaborative innovation. Yesterday we mentioned about innovation, right? For military and civilian science and technology. The fourth is strengthening the training and exchange of military and civilian talent, personnel. Fifth, enhancing social service and military logistic coordination and support. The last one is boosting, increase the modernization of national defense mobilization. And also set emerging field of NCF. China tried to seize in high, new, deep, and far frontier integration. And that is in the field of ocean, space, cyberspace, biology, new energy, and AI. So these are the 6 emerging fields. And China tried to seeking the development of high and new technology from both military and civilian uses. At the same time, going out in China is 走出去, a strategy that encourage civilian enterprise to operate internationally to safeguard the ever-expanding national interest. And China intention for MCF, we can see that 2017, they established a unit in the party. The Central Department is the Central Military Civil Fusion Commission to do. I mentioned that the party control everything. So in the party, they have this unit to control the whole country, including the party, including the government, and including the military. And through the military civil fusion and investing in dual-use technology and using civilian resources to develop military technology, civilian can also transfer the military technology to civilian use. Okay. Civilian to military use and civilian use to military use. Okay. And develop military technology at a lower cost. Use this approach to pay lower cost to get high technology. Okay. And because of the bottleneck of the CCP military and technology, the development of NCF is not focused on combat technology, but rather on logistic, base construction, catering, chemical industrial, biomedicine, network security, and internet, energy conservation, and environmental protection. So this is also the problem of the China MCF. They don't have a capability to focus a big platform, weapon system. So change the object to the other thing, other technology. I can read this example. We can see the upper picture of the plane is J-31, and right now also transferred to J-35 to be on the aircraft carrier. a copy from United States F-35, I mentioned yesterday. And then it already to be a joke. Okay, to be a joke. You can see, yeah, but you rename to be J-35, but your capability is not qualified to compete with the F-35 of the United States. This is China-made Falcon aircraft, like a special force use. You can see this also the so-called use the MCF to make this like helicopter. And NCF development strategy issued. Okay, I skip this slide. And I conclude that the 5 major shortcomings of China NCF. The first one is the gap between the cutting edge, the very good technology, need and private technology. Second one is the gap between the determination and motivation of central and local enterprise to promote. So there's a big gap between the central and the local enterprise. The third one is the gap between the free market and the military market in their different way to cooperate. The fourth one is the regulation governed whether the patent rights belong to the military or private enterprise are unclear. So civilian enterprise developed this weapon system. The Western right belong to this enterprise or belong to the military. If belong to the civilian enterprise, maybe they can sell to another country, right? But belong to the military, why civilian enterprise want to develop this kind of weapon system? The last one is the homogenization of development in the same region result in duplication of investment and waste of cost. The implication, I think maybe the last slide. The risk of the private enterprise dealing foreign military technology. Okay, so why a civilian enterprise steal the technology from other country for military? And in addition to the state-owned enterprise, and private enterprise had increasingly taken the role of importing technology, and incident of the plagiarism, fraud, and thief by any means are common, which affect China's image and make foreign country guard against China technology thief. And China defense industry is relatively backward than other countries. And the flow of talent is sure and rigid. And private enterprise often make repeated investment in the research direction, production, and institution and equipment configuration. There is often a gap between regulation and the civil regulation, and making it difficult to meet the one standard. And conversion from military to civilian involves military secret and require a relatively long operation time, and progress is relatively slow because it is secret, top secret. And then the process will be very slow. Okay. Okay. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just use the remaining 2 minutes, because I wanted to be a free rider, but apparently the Chair and Dr. Shen do not allow me to do so. So I think to conclude, I think this paper tries to convey 2 central messages. The first is that when it comes to China's MCF, the problem seems to lie in the institutional factor. That is, the so-called supplier and client relations. So here, the client being the PLA, whereas the supplier being the Chinese conglomerates or the so-called big companies, state-owned companies. Now, ideally, it should be the case that the PLA put forth its demand, and then the military or the defense industry produce what the PLA needs. But in China, this is not always the case. So because the main actors are the state-owned enterprises, they do not have motivation for efficiency, for competition. And so, and also they occupy the positions to determine what national resources can be allocated. So in this process, the state-owned enterprises produce what the POA has to use rather than the other way around. So I think this is the most significant factor that explains why there are some structural problems with China's MCF. So the implication is that even though Xi Jinping himself tries to enhance its leadership and to promote MCF, for instance, in 2017, he established a central commission for the integration of civil and military development. This effort alone was not sufficient. And the Chinese case is also quite different from the US case. Although the Chinese government tries to introduce several organizations in terms of innovation, and from the US, the institutional factors hindered that kind of effort. So in the US, basically, military procurement is done by the private sector. So companies compete for the DoD's contracts. But in China, because of the presence of this big state-owned companies, this is not the case. So I think this is the first message or findings we have for this paper. And my second point is that this, however, doesn't say that the Chinese MCF is a total failure. So in other areas, for instance, the drones and artificial intelligence, the AI, China is quite good at these two areas. And what explains that success, I think, is from the private sector, from the civil society. For instance, the drones, even though the Chinese government since 2017 has come up with a list indicating what kinds of technologies future drones should have, the advance and the development of drones in China, I think, need to be explained in part by the COVID-19. Because during the COVID-19 pandemic, there were lockdowns in major Chinese cities. So there were practical demands for the local government to surveil and to monitor people and to deliver the necessary services like food, like medications, and so on and so forth. So in this period of time, the private sector had the incentives to develop the so-called low altitude, slow, and small drones, and this kinds of drones in turn can be applied to or for military purposes. So I think this is also one issue area we need to pay particular attention. Yeah, and I think yes, Dr. Shen is reminding me, so I just stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee and Dr. Shen. This was really a very precise presentation on the military-civil fusion. And most importantly, you have pointed out the 5 gaps that are existing there in the military-civil fusion. This is even when, from the beginning, defense modernization and science and technology modernization is going hand in hand, and still these gaps are persisting there. But irrespective of that, they have been able, what you have pointed out, is to ensure a good partnership in the logistical sector, in energy conservation, etc. So that also, it seems, the Chinese establishment is clear what they can achieve, and whatever they could achieve through this military fusion, they are trying to do it in all those sectors. And the 3 sectors that you have pointed out where they are focusing in terms of military civil fusion is artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and quantum computing. And all these three sectors, they are going to, or they are rather, they have already started dominating the world. And the developments in these three sectors are shaping the science and technology in the 21st century. So in all these contexts, I think the points that you have raised are quite important one. Now let me invite our next speaker, Dr. Jabin Jacob from Shiv Nadar University.
Thank you, Parimal. Let me begin by thanking the MIT School of Government for partnering with us and the Institute of Chinese Studies for the 7th India Forum on China. Now, I realize that I stand between two sets of experts. There are Taiwanese friends as well as Brigadier Narang. So both sides have military experience, and I am the civilian here. So what I'm going to try and do is, try and pull out a certain aspect of what we call military-civil fusion in China, which is the development objectives, and in some ways supplement what has gone before me by the two, spoken by the two Taiwanese speakers, but also make it relevant to a situation or an institution such as this. And most of you are students of political science. For our guests, I want to say that this is one place, the School of Government in MIT is a place that actually trains our future leaders. And I think it's very important. One of the big shortcomings in the Indian context is the lack of knowledge of military affairs among our political class. And not just military affairs, of course, but in general foreign policy and security affairs. So it's very important. I mean, the reason why this theme is very important is precisely because this is a form of excuse me, training you for future governance and leadership. Our Taiwanese friends talked about how China is learning or has learned a great deal about the civil-military integration or military-civil fusion process from the Americans. So the question for us is, since we are in this undeclared competition with the Chinese, what is it that we can learn also and maybe not learn from the Chinese experience, right? So, okay, this is actually, okay, or is it? Oh, no. How's it going? I'm sorry, where is the beginning of this, please? Put it in the beginning. Yes. Yeah, this is the first slide, please. Yeah. Yes. Okay. You have to scroll back. Yeah. So how can I go this way? Okay, this is the. Okay, fine. All right, good. But no, can you go back to the previous slide? So this doesn't seem to go in. Okay, fine. I will just make sure that it goes in one direction. So this is my broad outline. I look at one aspect, one key feature of the idea of military-civil fusion as a development project. When I say development, I'm just, obviously some factors have already been mentioned, but I'm looking at one factor, one key feature of this development project, which is centralization. And the other is an objective, alleviating regional disparity. I mean, China is a large country, and China, by the way, is not a fully developed country. So one of the objectives, one of the smart things that all leaders will do is try and maximize your resources. You put in X amount of money and you want it to do multiple things. So military-civil fusion, that's the objective. And I look at, the objectives within the this larger goal of alleviating regional disparity, and an example of a typical provincial level military-civil fusion committee. And I give you some case studies, and two of them are Chinese regions bordering India, and one is a random case study from the middle of China. And the conclusion. So, civil-military fusion, or what in normal political science parlance in other parts of the world is known as civil-military integration, has a long history. 50s, 60s onwards, this has been around. And the while in English is always called civil-military integration for a longest time, in Chinese the expression has changed. It's called Chunmin Jiehe, Chunmin Iti Hua. So the expression changing means that the Chinese objectives with this process has also changed. That is to say that while you might dismiss China as an authoritarian state, this is an authoritarian state with a great capacity for self-reflection and learning. Yesterday's presentation by Mr. Pranay Dive, you saw that Made in China 2025 statement, in which the Chinese are reflecting and critical about the problems in their manufacturing sector. So the fact that they keep changing their terms all regularly means that they are also constantly thinking how to make this process efficient. Now, the basic objective is to ensure civilians participate in military initiatives, okay? And that military effort can also be converted for civilian good. This has always been the basic fundamental of civil-military integration. But under Xi Jinping, you know, the objective, I mean, the military-civil fusion term has slightly longer prominence than Xi Jinping, but the objective has also become very sharply about preserving the regime in power. So, you know, we always say China is a party state. So don't forget that it is a party state. It is a state devoted to keeping one political party in power. This must not be forgotten. So it doesn't function or think like a normal state. You know, in our country, governments may come and fall, but larger objectives remain the same. But and the objective is not to keep one political party in power. Whereas in China, the objective is to keep the Communist Party of China in power. So, Chunmin Ronghe, or military civil fusion, actually originated in the 17th Party Congress report by, 17th Party Congress report by by Hu Jintao, the former General Secretary of the Communist Party of China before Xi Jinping. And then, of course, it has picked up pace under Xi Jinping. Now, if you look at it, in the past, before Xi Jinping, the civilian leader, he's the General Secretary of the Communist Party, is also the head of the Central Military Commission. He wore this outfit. It's not a military uniform. But Xi Jinping has moved to wearing a military uniform. All right? So this tells you, it's a signal to say that the people and the military have to work much, much closer together. Right? Now, what are the implications for us as researchers? You know, a lot of Indian scholars go to China, work with their laboratories, etc., and so on. And one of the recent finding discovered that more than over 100 papers each, scientific papers each from the UK and the US, have been the result of collaborations between civilian scientists in the UK and the US with military counterparts in China. But these civilians did not know that they were working with Chinese military researchers. They come to the UK or the US in the civil uniform, but they are working for military institutions. And what is a very, and there was a specific rule in 2017 that the Chinese Communist Party put out, saying that that no institution should call itself a ministry, bureau, or department, so that foreigners don't get the idea that this is a government-run or a military-run institution, right? So this is an example from a Journal of Chemistry, all right, Journal of Inorganic Materials. And if you look at the bottom, it's called the High-Tech Institute of Xi'an and the High-Tech Institute of Beijing. That's the translation in English. But they forgot to change the translation in the name in Chinese. The name in Chinese, it says the Rocket Force Engineering University in Xi'an and the Rocket Force Equipment Construction, I think that's what, I can't see it from here, in Beijing. So high tech is now become a synonym for, we should understand high tech institutes as a synonym for military institutions. But civilians, if you don't know about the Chinese military civil fusion system, you think it's okay to work with these guys. Another thing, everybody's heard of the South China Sea dispute, right? So the Chinese have developed a city and one of the occupied features called Sansha. Now, Sansha is a good example of military civil fusion. Every aspect of Sansha is a is an example or a work of military agencies and civilian agencies working together, right? Closer home, we have the example of these Shaokong villages, these border villages that the Chinese have built up all across along the LAC, and these are also again examples of how military and civilian work agencies work together. So these are issues that actually affect us in real time. Now, let me come to the question of centralization. So here you see Xi Jinping back in his, traditional civilian military uniform. But, the idea here is, Dr. Lee mentioned the 2017 Civil Military Fusion Development Committee, the plenary. So the objective there was the rise of civil military integration, or MCF, or military civil fusion development, into a national strategy is a major achievement of our long-term exploration of the laws of coordinated development of economic construction and national defense construction. So economic construction comes before national defense construction, in the sense that there is an equal, if not greater priority often, for economic development and economic objectives from MCF. But at the same time, under Xi Jinping, the idea is to centralize power and to ensure that things get done at the local level. In China, it's so diverse that often provincial authorities will not listen to the central government authorities. So there's another example. They have a national defense education work plan. So you have these students in uniform. On Sundays, all the top universities in China, they have to have if you are good enough to get into a top university in China, you also have the pressure of participating in military activities over the weekend, etc. So here you have, as part of a national defense education form, you are already training your researchers or your students or scholars who are going to graduate into thinking along MCF lines, right? But at the same time, these documents will also come up with lines such as, you have to remove obstacles to innovation and development, which is to say, again, our Taiwanese friends gave in the conclusion, there's a lot of slips betwixt the cup and the lip, as Shakespeare would put it. That while they have all these grand plans, you should not assume that all of these plans are working so smoothly. Everybody thinks that Chinese are perfect or 10 feet tall or such master strategists, but they make huge amounts of mistakes, and not everything is smooth, all right? So, which brings us to why things are not smooth. Like I said, China is a huge and complex country. Okay, so you have all these provinces, and you see the differences between the provinces. You see the eastern coast is much more developed than the central or the western parts of China. And therefore, one of the big objectives that they have of MCF is to ensure that these regional hubs develop. Now, so you have the Yangtze River Development region, or you have the province of Tibet getting aid from different other provinces of China. The well-off provinces help the poorer parts of Tibet, or big companies in China help the poorer counties or cities in Tibet. Anhui, so this is the final section. I picked a random province in China, central China, called Anhui, and look at the kind of issues that a budget for military civil fusion in the provincial committee of Anhui deals with. Urban and rural community expenditure, agriculture, forestry, water, assistance to other regions such as Tibet, natural resources, marine, meteorology, etc., housing security, financial assistance for students. The funds are earmarked for vocational education, of course, science, technology, and so on. It is R&D. Tibet, all of their airports are dual use. So Sichuan-Tibet Railway, again, just one of the railways. I'm giving you an example. Again, a case of military civil fusion. Training for businesses, agriculture development, greenhouse farming. Greenhouse farming has become a big thing in Tibet, TAR, Tibet Autonomous Region now. All of it is supported by a combination of military agencies as well as private companies, or Chinese, civilian sector companies. Xinjiang, everybody's heard of Xinjiang if you've heard of the Uyghur issue and the oppression of the Uyghurs that's going on. So state-owned enterprise systems. You know what the Food Corporation of India does? There in Xinjiang province, the military is, a lot of it is in charge of the military. Water preservation is a desert area, so water conservancy, medical issues, veterans welfare, this of course happens in all provinces. Re-education camps, what we talked about, the Uyghur issue. New materials, new energy. Xinjiang is a center for big companies called TBEA and so on, which also have, by the way, branches in India. They are in charge of developing engineering products, new materials, energy, and so on. Environmental protection, radio and television networks. I mean, imagine All India Radio were to be run by the military. So this is what happens in a province like Xinjiang. Of course, airports again. So in conclusion, I will repeat many of the points that our Taiwanese friends made. It's a question what political science we call fragmented authoritarianism. While it's authoritarian, the point is it doesn't really work so efficiently, and it has to be seen as a you can't just understand or study China from a central government level. You have to go down to the provincial local level. There's a lack of coordination. There's a duplication of technology because sometimes the provinces are competing with each other. Your S&T assets are all in a very scattered, they are not coordinated well properly. They are all scattered around the country. And final point is, of course, that if you're going to use the military to run the economy, how efficient will the military be? It goes against every market principle that a government is running the economy. And yet that is what the Chinese are trying to do, trying to ensure that the government runs the economy efficiently. And the military is one arm to do it. So I think finally, in terms of implications for India, if I might just take 30 seconds more, is that as students of politics, you have to understand how the military operates, number one. And even if you have going to learn, I mean, sort of a superficial learning of what China is doing will actually might give you the wrong lessons. So you need to be able to understand that to make the process efficient, first and foremost is to understand what the issues are, what is going on, and only then can you get into the business of analysis and solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jabin. I could understand it's very difficult for a teacher to conclude anything in 12 minutes, but you still managed to convey a lot of important points. And one of the very important point that is that all the students of international relations and particularly those interested in China, they should know is for Chinese and to understand China, terminology is highly important. That what exact terms the Chinese party or Chinese government is using, it has a lot of implications for themselves and for rest of the world as well. Your presentation, Dr. Jabin, was very nuanced one, I must say, and has actually could raise a lot of questions about what's happening in China. The central-provincial relationship also you have brought up in this, and you pointed out that everything is not so smooth, and particularly that the provinces don't listen to the center a lot of times. So that is something that those who study Indian politics, for them this certainly would be something new to understand how exactly the Chinese system is functioning. And in that context, the civil-military fusion is, I think, maybe is it a way to basically address the insecurity of the Chinese party state and through ensuring the military presence in many of the endeavors that generally the government should carry forward. They are trying to see that things are not going out of the control. So I think these are some of the questions that are emerging from your presentation. And for us, you have pointed out how military-civil fusion is actually affecting India on the India-China border, wherein they are constructing villages and keeping up the entire border row as a potential conflict between India and China. So thank you so much. And now let me invite Brigadier Anshuman Narang for his presentation here. Please.
Am I heard well? I've got a lot of stuff. It's fine, it's fine.
It's being recorded. So it is being recorded.
It's recorded. Sorry.
there are a lot of slides and I had planned on 20 minutes, so I'll stick by 15 or whatever 12 minutes, and I'll go fast on the slides.
We have 15 minutes.
So don't get carried away by the content on the slide. It's to convey a particular point, and I'll just drive home one point from each. Any space ecosystem has three parts to it. It's going the other way. It's got the upstream, that's the one which is in space, the satellites and everything. And second is the downstream. Downstream is the one which we are all affected with. You know, you have your phones, you have your Google Maps on and all this. That's what is the downstream. But when you want military-civil fusion, what becomes more important is that the civilian revenues are being generated. So today, when you use Google, you find the route to this place. Who's getting paid? Americans. When you use Starlink on your phone, who's getting paid? Elon Musk. But who's getting facilitated? The American military. But if you use the same civil Map My India by Mr. Rohan or a Navic chip, who gets facilitated? Indian military. The Indian this thing. Have you thought about it? So that is what civil military cooperation is about. Ensuring that the revenues generated by the Chinese commercial firms get on to their military. With that as the aim, I'll just leave it. All of you will be novices, many of you. Just keep it in your mind, what are you grading China as in their space capabilities. I'll show you what the US stated. Like Olympics 2024, China won 5 golds, 4 silvers and 5 bronzes. Total medal tally ahead of US. And these are the various parts you may not understand. Just to put you simply, understand in space, EO, electro-optical, is like your visual. You're seeing a man. A doctor, you go down to a doctor, he sees your face and understands it. But a lot of complications he can't make out. So when you have to click a photograph and the weather is bad, you'll not get a clear photograph. So you're going for an X-ray. X-ray is SAR. And then if you have to go down something lower, you go for a CT scan or MRI, and that's multispectral and hyperspectral. That's how camera functions. You're seeing this satellite growth phenomenally high, but see the quantum. China at 647, USA at 4,723. But that's not what the eye needs to accept. China is not 1/5 of what US is. We'll just come on to it. Now see the second part, military civil, where in 2014 to 18, China's civilian blue arrow was much lower than red. See the tonnages sent. In 2023, it's nearly at par. So there is a significant change. You go ahead, economics, which I talked about. The biggest challenge today is to get lowest cost. Falcon 9 of Starlink, Elon Musk has managed to get it less than $1,000 per kg. So every 1 kg you're sending it up in space, he's trying to get it at a lower than $1,000 per kg. That's the cost. Whereas the others are struggling. So reusability, second part, to launch a military satellite, you may do it as much. From 2007 till 2024, you've just come down thrice, 3 times the cost. Whereas on a civilian cost, you've come down 10 times. Because the revenues are getting generated, it becomes easier to produce. And that's where the civil-military cooperation has to come in, and I'll highlight those issues exactly. Now, second part which I talked about, you see the 2158 number of communication satellites. Now, out of that 4,000 satellites, 2,000 plus satellites have been launched by one man alone, Elon Musk. And he is an ideal example of space cooperation, civil-military. Crossing 400 billion mark, nearly 1/5 of India's economy, 150 countries GDP together, that's what Elon Musk is today. He has the power to speak to the Ukrainian president and deny him during war, I'll not provide you this. And for those 3-4 days, the Ukrainian army did not get any Starlink communication. What is China doing? China challenged, and Elon Musk made fun of China on electric vehicle cars. Today, Tesla is not number 1. The same state, Chinese are struggling in and out, have their civil-military cooperation together to have their equivalent of US Starlink. And that's the challenge which we are going to be talking about. certain lessons from space. My Taiwanese friend beautifully brought out two critical lessons. I'll just come a bit later. Now, Wenchuan earthquake. See, there is an earthquake which happens. National disaster management authorities need to move. The satellite up is that upstream in air. That picks up a photograph. The photograph is there of the earthquake where the casualties are taking place, but that doesn't reach the people in time. So the Chinese scientist brings out a lesson. Oh, no, we need to reduce the time. The pirates which are to be caught in Africa, they move to a point, but by the time the PLA reaches that point, it is 5 hours late. Why the delay? Because the satellite is up in Africa, the data has to be passed somewhere else. So that time delay. And Chinese work out that we need to reduce this time. Make an Earth observation brain. You are seeing so many, they say it's the fools who learn from own mistakes. The intelligent people learn from others' mistake. And all these conflicts have shown two things. One, what he brought out is the miniaturization of drones, small drones. You have those blanket delivery, you have advertisements coming in, there is someone flying your FPV, the mother orders, the son from home is driving FPV, delivers the coffee while he's driving a boat. The parents are enjoying the same thing being used in military to deliver the ammunition. Second part is the commercialization of the space. Now, commercialization of the space, as you understand, in military there is a term called kill chain. And what the Chinese call it today, a recent phrase, detection means destruction. You're moving on a combat space, you get detected, and it should ensure you're finally destroyed. That is getting enabled by space. When a ship is moving, civilian ship will give out electronic signals. So an alien satellite will pick up that signal. Or may not. That carrier comes ahead or a civilian ship comes ahead. There is a SAR satellite which I talked about, a radar, something like an X-ray, finds out the steel content. And that doesn't get detected. Then you have an electro-optical. So all that cycle together, and why I'm talking about satellites? Because maximum of these satellites which you'll see ahead are civilians. You see the quantum increase in the civilian satellites. Out of 67 launches, more than 100 kg, 20 were commercial. Only 47 were military. That's what Xi Jinping had to say. To explore the vast cosmos, develop the space industry and build China into a space power. And the pillars are innovation. They've taken a lot of time to catch up. And significantly a lot of time in high-tech engines and high-tech technologies. But what has bridged the gap is the creation of something called the Strategic Support Force in 2015 and today transformed into Aerospace Force. Being right next, putting all those civilian entities together, getting the BIDU. I mean, we were talking sometime earlier, the amount of commercial generation which BIDU has done and ensure that this place, which at some time you were, where they managed to just come ahead of America for a year and then Elon Musk changed it for America with Space Command also coming up. They have created the Aerospace Force. Now, Aerospace Force has a lot of civilians. Professor Jacob pointed out some time back. So it has a lot of civilians. You have to keep that issue into mind. The dream, we are clear. They have made out fantastic goals of where they need to be, including resource exploration, picking up things from Mars, picking up things from outer planets, and going down and picking up those resources. All the resources crunch, how they need to make it up. Those plans are going completely in place. But what is important is they have identified technologies. Now these technologies are being developed by the civilians. On-orbit intelligent processing, the AI. Processing it, one satellite itself, one doctor, you go, I mean, today what happens? I took my mother, he'll say, oh, this is gastrologist, now you go to this man and then you go and then MRI done and then you do. No, what they're doing, one satellite itself will do all your processing and provide you a data in 8 minutes on your mobile. That's what they're looking at. And for that, keep BRI scope in mind. See, money, for Chinese money matters a lot. While also ensuring their regional coverage in the Indo-Pacific Ocean gets covered together. So two aims, military and a civil aim, covered together by a trilogy. Now the commercialization, while this is the world space economy booming, showing fantastic results of how much revenues Western companies are able to derive from space, China is learning it. And that's why 2 years back, they talked about sending 10,000 satellites up in air, and now their aim is 35,000 satellites. Today, they are at about 800 plus satellites. 2030, 35,000 satellites. See the difference, which means 5,000 satellites every year they need to send up. And if for those 5,000 satellites you take away, it's about 200,500 tons of material being sent up. What they have done, as someone talked about earlier, the state-owned enterprises. First, the government reform, how the state-owned enterprises have been reformed. And thereafter, those countries, state-owned enterprises combined with the civilians. They have a proper structure in place to ensure, and then they start funding the commercial institutes. And that's not enough. They identify the errors by 2023, how much funding, 2028, how much funding. And then, as Professor Jacob pointed out, you go and give every province responsibility that each province has to have this space policy, has to achieve this kind of a data. And that's why you see 17 provinces and cities, 40 space related policies they have. They have made 20 commercial space parks. These are the 40 space parks, significantly managing a lot of things together. And each one of them has a military front end which has to be understood and a back end. Top satellite companies today. Now see, all of them have come from 2015 and 2014. Till then, like us, it was just the ISRO, it was just the CASC and others who were managing it. See the growth. And at number 2 company, you have someone which has just got raised in January 22. That's the first company, which is that doctor which I'm talking about, Geely Constellation. Position, navigation, timing, remote sensing, communication, all in one payload. That's what they're working on. So that's the significant difference. And to tap this, finally you need to see the effect. Now while this, what we see is the propaganda of going to be able to process, putting all that together, what I talked to you about, and giving it out to the user mobile terminal, bang, in 7 minutes 51 seconds. That's the time frame. So you require a data, you're moving to your house, you find flooded, and you want the data of your house, which is back home somewhere in Himachal, and it's got flooded. 7 minutes on your user mobile, the output should come. Now they're claiming they've achieved it. They may not have, they may have taken 1 hour, 2 hours, but even that much time is a significant progress. And to see the output, see, this is for all who don't know, this is Eastern India, the eastern states, starting from Sikkim, going up to Arunachal Pradesh and Wolong. This is the output from the civilian satellites. And see the month output. Sikkim, there is a flood which is taking place. Why are the Chinese interested? Glaciated lake outburst. 430 images of that area in 1 month, purely by one constellation. That's the kind of output. See, similar thing in Eastern Ladakh. Another example, we know what was happening in Manipur. See the time frame, January to April 23. Just 12 satellites, 22,610 captures. Civilian satellites. These are not military satellites. You can't get the data of military satellite captures. Civilian satellite captures of our area. So a lot of work going down in getting those companies, but they are not 10 feet tall. They are the same height. Remember that. When you talk about that Western industry, there is only one Chinese industry which was featuring. They are trying their best, but yes, they are short. So commercialization, particularly communication, is a challenge for them. Now, finally, how does that civil commercial fusion affect and impact us? This has got a heavy slide, but it's got a lot of background data. The quantum of satellites today they have up in space, each constellation. And what you see on the right is the military and left is the civilian. And this civilian satellites on various kind of varieties are facilitating them to get the kind of data which I was talking about. Second kind of an image which is geospatially Earth, and you see the layout, the region, Indo-Pacific region. These satellites are fixed. So any movement below them, they're going to be covering the movement. So whether it is Taiwan Strait, their exercise is taking place, Indo-Pacific Ocean, they've got their focus clear where they need to pick up the data. This is those picking up the transmissions, informing the other, queuing the satellites, an LN transmission, queuing a SAR, X-ray satellite. to pick up and finding out whether the steel is there or not, whether it's a fake, ocean observation satellites. And today, this is the kind of visual picture, if you stand on one place in India, right from 1657 till 1702, 5 minutes, the kind of satellites which will be observing over you, one particular area. And this is Jilin. So, to sum up, gentlemen, see the capacity of the Chinese, Jilin, Superview, and this is a Western assessment. Now, you add the quantum. So, from morning 9 o'clock till afternoon about 1 o'clock, the facility has been provided by the civilians. You see, the military is up. What is in blue is civil. Less than every 12 minutes, he has the capacity to revisit. And it's not me saying alone. The gold medals, both in imaging, the quality, and the revisit time is for China, being given by America. So, understand that. Second, the multispectral. If you are, there is going to be a fake, there is going to be deception, you need multispectral and hyperspectral. The chain, Superview, China Sevai satellite comes up first. Going down to hyperspectral, there is a particular band where China is not functioning well. They cope up with the other band. They are not good on X band, they cope up with the C band. Because they started late, they couldn't have the good frequencies, they had to shift the band. And that's where, somewhere in between the linkages, who gets, who applies, those linkages are being shortened through the civil-military fusion. Military and hence, this civilian capacities, what the military would have desired on its own is on one side. You see just this line, the top one, PLA, then the government, then the commercial. It is the civilian capacities which are enhancing and achieving the desired aims of the military. At the same time, if they are able to generate the revenue, that's where when this thing succeeds. The last part is the communication. This is where Elon Musk and everyone else was when the thing started. And as we speak, this is Guowang, G60 and others which were at zero when this year started. And as we are speaking, they are about, by tomorrow, there are about 6 more satellites which are going to be launched. So they are significantly moving up in this race. They have launched 54 such satellites in 2024. They are expecting one more launch by this end. So from zero, they are coming to 60 and they have to go to literally 5,000 a year. So that's what they are working out in every band, in every manner, and enhancing the revenue cost. Each of that mobile satellite-enabled terminal has to cost cheaper, and it will cost cheaper only when you enhance the capacities, and then the military gets a solution much faster and advantage whether the 6G raids. Yes, I've discussed these challenges: communication, reusability, the upstream launch cost, what the military is gaining, how are you going to manage the revenue, access to advanced technologies. That's where he says 3 things: innovation, priority 1. Those are Xi's pet dialogue. Technology is key code compatibility, and talent is a strategic resource. So these 3 things he's focusing on. And in space today, if any nation has to win the race, there are 20 factors from my side. This is purely my research. There are 20 R's which you need to manage. And in those 20 R's, the most critical 5 and the ones which I enable going to be purely require civilian interest. I finished. I hope I didn't take time.
May I request all the panelists to come forward for taking questions, comments, for further discussion. Thank you, Brigadier Anshuman Narang, for such an elaborate presentation. It will take a lot of time for us to absorb all of this data and information. But the only impression I could gather is it is highly important for all of us to understand and to go in depth of what you have presented here, because this is certainly going to have a lot of implications on science and technology in the world, and also on the Indian region as well. Before we go into the question and answer session, may I request all the panelists, if we could get your presentations, because all the participants would like to have them, and if we could share it with all the participants. Yes, thank you so much. So the floor is now open for questions, comments. Please introduce yourself and be brief in your question. So, Atharva.
Good morning, one and all. My name is Atharva. I am from MIT SOG. There are two questions, one to Dr. Shen and one to Brigadier Narang. To Dr. Shen, you mentioned that in supply chain, China is focusing on increasing the resources. So, what is the approach of increasing the resources, and do they do resource mapping as such in the supply chain, supply-demand chain? And to Brigadier Narang, my question is, you talked about China's focusing on launching 35,000 satellites in coming years. So it is basically the crux is to increase the payload capacity. So in the context of India, where does India stands in terms of payload capacity? And what is the approach to increase that?
Saran.
We know that military-civil fusion is a very important strategy to China, especially CCP, because they don't have best and they don't have technology to get advanced weapon system. So they need pour more resources to the civilian, because we know that the civilian enterprise of China, not real civilian enterprise. Some of it is military industrial and then reform and to be the civilian enterprise. And also, why had so many corruption in China? You can see that very famous China Norico, North military enterprise company, Wang Jun, they also the party second generation. And that this civilian enterprise connected to the military and then can get more budget and resort to this project and then corruption. So, but China don't have another way to get more advanced technology because sanction, because if you use military way to get more advanced technology, many countries, Western countries were not allowed to give China. But it can use a civilian enterprise to get that cooperation or maybe invest to another Western company and buy their company back to the China. They have different way, but result is very important. So China need to pay more result to this strategy, to this civilian enterprise to get more advanced technology.
Before I start, I'll just add two things to the resource part. The mother or the father of both Taiwan and China in a way is Mr. Sun Yat-sen. And in 1922, he said about Tibet what Professor Jacob talked about. Tibet has the maximum mineral resources. And when everyone will dry up in China, you would have to go to Tibet. And he laid down those railway lines which need to be made to Tibet. And those railway lines are being made to those exact places which meet those mineral requirements as well as meet the military requirements. And they are being made by whom? Xinjiang Construction and Production Corps. Tibet, so many other things. Whether it's connecting Sichuan, it is connecting Qinghai, or it's connecting Gansu, Xinjiang and others. So that's first part. Second part is you take an example of distant water fishing fleets. A particular example where Chinese Coast Guard merges with them or the maritime militia merges with them. They go to Brazil, which was a concern with Brazil, wasn't distant. And fish is a resource, a primary staple diet for them. They need it. So that resource mapping they're adequately doing. Coming down to the second part of your satellites, launching 35,000 satellites is not just the payload. 35, that's the front end, what you're seeing, the payload. To launch that satellite, you require rockets. To launch those rockets, you require rocket engines. To launch that rocket engines, you require the fuel. And to be able to do all that, you'll require a place to launch them from. So that place to launch them for, they had 3, they increased to 4, they now made 5, and they're looking towards 7. To have that many satellites up, they require that payloads, they require the batteries, they require the components. So that satellite production capacity itself, today, if you have to have an honest evaluation, is just about 2,000 satellites per year to produce the satellites itself. They're trying to reach to 5,000. So that's one constraint. Launch capacities. It's not more than about 300 what they can handle today. And even if you see a lot of ride sharing, that are a lot of satellites, something like India displayed, and then the Chinese beat that record having 63 satellites on one rocket going up. Still, you require a particular quantum of rockets. And then finally, the weight, what you were indicating towards. Now, where India stands, I'll not elaborate on it. Intentionally, you'll understand. But yes, we have one launch center. So you require that many launch centers. You require the capacity to launch heavy satellites, because only heavy satellites will take that payload. So while Chinese plans are absolutely ambitious, reusability and others, but one thing in a hurry, I sort of left it, their reusable rockets, they have still not succeeded. And they are testing 8 of them in 2025. 7 are private players and 1 is government. Where are we today? In that medal tally, you found one, that was Pixel, Anand. That's an Indian commercial player who has just gone into it. That was the first satellite. One more satellite of its hyperspectral has been launched. They are working on a data library. The civilian talent is, I mean, it's astonishing. It's damn good. We have to break those compartments and get them. We can succeed and beat them. Just be confident about it.
Hello, sir. I'm from SP College, and my question is that Chinese military is developing military, as we all aware, and there are many developing nations and companies which have threats regarding security and software. So, is this only one solution to all the challenges? Only sanction is a execution for all companies, or anything else could be the solution to them? That's my question, I think.
Basically, as I understand, I may be wrong, you are saying, are sanctions the solution to stop them, or
Yeah.
what else can be done to stop their progress?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So true.
See, when 2 lotuses grow next to each other, one lotus does not, look, you try and grow your own lotus stronger. So, the actual way of growth is, sharing knowledge is doubled. You grow yourself stronger, I think so that will be a better way, because any determined person, and that's what the Chinese have picked up. When they were denied nuclear support initially by Russia and then by US, they went on and made their own. So the determination of that country gets stronger and stronger by denial. But if you make yourself stronger, and for us, that's the biggest lesson today. We have to be indigenously strong. Please ask all of you, and that's why I gave that example. That man, Mr. Rohan Verma, he's worked so hard to make that map My India. How many of you are using it on your mobile? We're all using Google Maps. So think back. So I'm just trying to say is, I don't feel that sanctions is a solution to stop them. That will make them only critically stronger. You stop them by not providing those nanometers of semiconductors. They broke those barriers of 14 nanometers and have come down below it. Now, they will have their own lithographic machines because Taiwan is bound not to give it to them. But somewhere down the line, they will find a ways and means. Today, in the Russia-Ukraine war, the biggest challenge to Ukrainians is because the Western's technology is not succeeding as good as the Chinese miniaturized drones. They are succeeding faster, but they are not able to have access to Chinese. So they are building their own. You see the project Brave 1, which is they've started. Fantastic, school-going, college-going students coming up with fantastic solutions. Their minds are being allowed to go free and work for the nation. So my take will be work on ourselves to be superior than them.
Yes, Soham, and then
Good morning, sir. Myself Soham Deshmukh, and my first question is to Dr. Jacob, sir. Sir, you mentioned that China is currently not a fully developed country. So, firstly, my take on it is that the UN requires fully developed countries to have carbon neutrality, like reduce carbon footprints, like, and the current the current manufacturing industry that they have will be affected by that, you know, as they require technological transfer and all of that. So I would like to hear your take on when you say why China is not a fully developed country. And my second question is to Brigadier sir. China currently, the Chinese space policy that they have. So the document says that they are currently a pro-space armament country, and they also have equipments like anti-sats that only a few countries in the world possess, like USA. So how does that come into picture when we take into consideration the US and India, US-India-China trilateral relations, or you know, even US and in US-China and India-China bilateral relations? Thank you, sir.
Okay, so quickly, the Chinese themselves say that they are not a fully developed country. As per their own statements, they have only become a moderately prosperous society by 2021, which is the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party. And moderately prosperous in their reckoning is the elimination of absolute poverty in China. But that also you have to remember that the standard benchmark for what is absolute poverty in China is different from the global benchmark for absolute poverty. The global benchmark is $2, and the Chinese is actually much lower than that. And this was before we got into COVID big time, so we don't know what the state is. The other thing is, I don't think carbon neutrality alone can be seen as a signifier of having developed. And by the way, if carbon neutrality is the goal, I think the Chinese are seeking to be carbon neutral by 2030. So they have their own goals. By 2049, the 100th anniversary of the establishment of the PRC is when they are saying that they will be a developed country, a major, a powerful nation. I mean, they have their own set of language for it. So, I mean, my short answer, I suppose, is to look at what the Chinese themselves are saying and take that seriously. Thank you.
Okay, your question about anti-satellite capabilities. Now, there are 5 or 6 factors in anti-satellite which function and which decide where you stand. Today, if you take those 5-6 factors, basically you have a capacity from ground to hit those satellites in low Earth, medium Earth. Then you have the capacity to lace them by electromagnetic and electronic warfare, or you have a cyber capacity, and so 5-6 parameters. In those 5-6 parameters, again there is something called operationalized, that yes, those technology has been displayed and operationalized. Another level is just displayed, and third is R&D is happening. Now in all those 5, Russia is number 1, China is number 2, and America is number 3. Why China is number 2? Because 3 of them have been operationalized, all 5 have not been. And India is not operationalized, has the capacity and R&D in some. So I leave it at that. So undoubtedly China is ahead. The space maneuver warfare which they are playing, the kind of maneuvers they are doing, it's significantly fast and they're working on it. So that's there.
Thank you so much, Chair. First, my compliments to all the speakers. This has been a really thought-provoking panel presentation. Just taking from, important points that each of you have mentioned, it's occurring to me that, one technology that will play a very significant role in the Chinese civilian military fusion project is the small modular reactor technology, the SMRs. If you see the SMRs are portable energy machines. Once the Linglong 1 is already being constructed in China, and this SMR is going to be commissioned in another 2 years. So you'll already see the SMRs being rolled out for energy production in another 2 years. But given how the Chinese function, this could also be a money-making business because they'll be exporting SMRs to other countries. The SMRs is also a base technology for your floating nuclear power plants. And because they are portable, they also have potential applications in military, for instance, your energy requirements in combat operations. But then I'm also thinking about, all the obstacles and all the limitations that each of you have mentioned in your presentation. So I guess my question is directed mainly towards Dr. Shen and Dr. Lee, but also Jabin, feel free to answer. Will we be overestimating the potential of a technology like the SMR for China?
I can read an example. I think several months ago, we can see that a submarine sinking in Changjiang, I think, because that the PLA tried to develop a new submarine, and the submarine have two different power systems. One is traditional, one is a new nuclear reactor, and then I don't know why, but you can see that China tried to import that some of the dual-use technology to use in the military development. That is a very good example. But I don't know why that the reason of that reactor or engine sinking or just some low-level mistake. I don't know. But you can see China try to develop many advanced weapon systems. It used the civilian enterprise to import some very important part and then integrate it to the one weapon system. Okay, that's a catch. So because the military, Jabin talking about, I don't know the brigadier, or Jabin talking about China right now have 10 military enterprise industrial. But these 10 military enterprise industrial cannot import that very important part. And then Western countries think it will be used in the military system. So it need to use a civilian enterprise to import that. Okay. And what your second question?
Just one question. Are we overestimating the potential of...
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I don't really have a good answer, but I think we are talking about technology development and innovation, but what goes hand in hand with technology development is standards. And so who sets the standards will win the market. And I think that requires international collaboration. Yeah, and because China is now promoting its own standards, and along with the African countries and those Central Asian countries, so they are getting an upper hand in terms of the numbers. But modern technology requires some very sophisticated discussion about the standards. I think in that regard, I mean, Taiwan tends to think ourselves as part of the Western world. So we, the Western world, should engage in the standard competition. And I think that's my take on that.
You want to say something?
Okay, see, overestimation of one part, I think so that may not be the correct thing. But yes, as he pointed out, one small component, particularly in power, can critically disable your whole thing. So every component has to be worked out together, and you have to give adequate importance to each one of them. And particularly power management, and there are various power technologies they are working on. That's a separate, 5 hours kind of a discussion on what all power management techniques they're working on.
Hello, sir. I'm from MITSchoolofGovernment. So my question is, what is the difference between the artificial intelligence used by China and India regarding satellites? My question is to Brigadier Narang. And where does these two nations rank on today's debate? And how do you think that India will use artificial intelligence in the future? Thank you.
See, as far as artificial intelligence is concerned with space, the machine learning, the general AI, the visual language models, the other language models, all are LLMs, VLMs, all are same, the base model is same. What China is trying to do is they're trying to get their own standards written on it. And that's a bit of a problem. But yes, Indians are following most of those Western collaborated models, and we are working more on that. Chinese is trying to steal them and work on their own, so that's where. But finally, when you talk about artificial intelligence or enablement or intelligentization of space sector, it means your machine is able to process that same image much faster. I'll just give you an example. Like there is this two water bottles which are there. Distinguish between a glass bottle and a Bisleri bottle. You need 600 images from a different set for the AI to be able to find out, how the facial recognition grew up. So where India is, we may not have, out of that 600 models, we would have collected about 100 data models. China would have collected about 300, 400. So there is a gap, there is an asymmetry, and our nation, our army, our people are working on it, to work on that asymmetry. But, I mean, the root of enablement, intelligentization, the methodology will nearly be the same, but yes, their way of implementation will be different.
So two small questions, one to Anshuman and Professor Shen. Anshuman, you showed a very comprehensive picture of China's space capabilities. But in last 1.5 years, I think not only the existing leadership of Rocket Force, but also the previous leadership has all been prosecuted and purged. So from outside, when I'm looking at PLA, Rocket Force and space capabilities, how do I say it in a composite framework? Like how much corruption affects their combat capability? And is the corruption only at the top, or is it also in the middle and bottom leadership? So that's one. And Professor Shen, the moment military starts getting to civilian issues, in market or whatever, the scope for corruption increases a lot. So how is she, especially when he's running his entire corruption campaign of tigers and flies and everything, how is he going to ensure that corruption will not seep in and completely, undermine his entire effort?
Okay, Li Shangfu, the first one, defense minister to be purged, was aerospace force, a strategic support force specialist. He used to run one of those launch stations, and his whole life had been in space, and he was the first one to be defense minister to be purged along with it. So military is a system, and let's accept one thing, they are being honest, they're being absolutely transparent, comparatively transparent than all other advanced militaries, whether it is Russia, US, and I will intentionally leave out some. They are being transparent. They are accepting that corruption is there. The official papers are accepting corruption is there. But a corrupt mind does not mean he's not professional, he's not thinking, he's not got a good mind. Corruption is there because finally, what is it? PLA is a party's army. It's not a national army. So that itself, I will say, is a corrupt mind. That you're fighting for the stability of the political leader and not of the nation. I mean, Indian army has to fight for our nation first, not for one party. So that aside, the stability of a military system, of space, how it is developing, or rocket force, how it is developing, is seen in other criterias. And we somehow get enstrained by that Western thing, that water tap on the rocket was there, and that's why it got purged, and that's the corruption and all. The Chinese gave a good response by the next system they tested. It was an immediate response they gave it. So they know where to purge. I mean, they know where to show. The military exercises 2024A in Taiwan Strait, Joint Sword, 2024B, and just concluded 2 days back, has a different color to it. What capabilities are desired? So a purging may not just be for corruption, it may be not being able to politically audit and achieve those? Well, so I'll leave it at that and we'll discuss more.
China is a party control country, so they have many strange operation or policy operation. You can understand. Okay, we know that Li Shangfu, because he's served as a general director of the General Armament Department, and then we can also see some general engineer of the Navy, for example, Aircraft Korea. General engineer commit suicide. Okay, we don't know why, but make sure it had corruption in there. Okay, you can check the China policy. I think first one is I give this service. I give Navy, I give Rocky Force, big project, and then this service try to find some company. Maybe national-owned company, maybe civilian company, to get this project. And then I will increase the budget to the central, but reduce some to myself, and then to the company. There's one model. The second model is different province. Right now central, Party Central have a very important strategy, important policy, so different provinces get some civilian enterprise to apply the project budget from the central. That we're wasting, because maybe the same company in different province, maybe a different company in one province, and then to apply the project, maybe they don't have capability, but get the project. Why? Bribe the party officer. So it will make the corruption. So I mentioned about that military civil fusion West, and maybe with a result, with money, and then because that company is not qualified. So you pour the money, but you can get the production qualified. Okay.
Thank you so much. I fear we are overshooting the time. So let us conclude this session now. And maybe informally we can have more discussion outside. So this was really a very good session, quite nuanced presentations and discussion on the aspects of civil-military fusion. In concluding this session, I would just say that it looks like the civil-military fusion is important for China to bridge the regional gap within China, and also the gap that China is facing vis-a-vis United States particularly, but in the world per se, in the domain of space technology and other technologies. In both these spheres, China is aware about these gaps, but they are not bogged down by these gaps, and they have a long-term plan to overcome. Whether those plans would succeed or not, we are not sure, but certainly they do have a long-term plan to overcome these gaps. So thank you so much all the panelists today, Dr. Shen, Dr. Lee, Dr. Jacob, and Brigadier Narang, for your presence and your insightful presentations with our students, and to all the audience. Before we conclude, let me felicitate all the speakers of today on behalf of MIT School of Government.